Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
How can a man who built everything for his family be told he doesn't belong at his own table? What happens when a harmless old guy responds to years of disrespect not with anger, but with a calm, calculated act that no one saw coming? The night my daughter-in-law handed me an observer badge, and my own son told me, foods for family, they thought I'd just accept my place. They were wrong. The smell of prime rib filled my kitchen as I checked the oven one last time. 62 years old, and I was still playing host in the house I'd built with my own hands. The irony wasn't lost on me, hosting a dinner where I wasn't even considered family anymore. "Frank, where are the good wine glasses?" Brittany Foster Mercer called from the dining room, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when addressing the help. My daughter-in-law had transformed my home into her stage, complete with expensive linens I'd never seen before, and centerpieces that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Top shelf, left cabinet," I replied, wiping my hands on a dish towel. Through the kitchen window, I could see their movable house sitting pretty in the center of my yard, positioned to catch every ray of morning sun. The dream home they'd parked there 18 months ago, with promises it was temporary. The front door burst open and Gerald Foster's booming voice filled my living room. "Where's our host?" Brittany's father strode in wearing a cashmere coat that probably cost more than my truck, followed by his wife Denise, who clutched a designer purse like a shield against my blue-collar existence. "Gerald! Denise!" Brittany rushed to greet them, air kissing and gushing over the expensive bottles of wine they'd brought. "You shouldn't have." "Only the best for family," Gerald declared, his eyes scanning my modest living room with barely concealed disdain. He handed me his coat without making eye contact. "Frank, good to see you." I hung their coats in the closet, noting how Denise's nose wrinkled slightly at my flannel shirt. These people had never forgiven me for existing, a constant reminder that their precious daughter had married beneath her station. My son Travis emerged from the bathroom, adjusting his tie. At 34, he'd grown into the kind of man who wore expensive cologne to family dinners and spoke in corporate buzzwords. "Dad, you didn't set up the bar properly. The Macallan should be front and center." "I don't drink Macallan," I said quietly. "It's not for you," Travis replied with a smirk that cut deeper than he probably intended. "It's for people who appreciate quality." The next hour played out like a familiar script. Gerald regaled everyone with stories about his latest real estate acquisitions, while Denise critiqued the neighborhood's declining property values. Brittany hung on their every word, occasionally throwing me pointed looks when they mentioned people who don't understand modern investment strategies. I busied myself in the kitchen, carving the roast I'd spent all afternoon preparing. Through the doorway, I watched my ex-wife Linda arrive, greeting everyone with polite smiles. Even after our divorce, she still attended these gatherings for appearances' sake, though she barely acknowledged my existence beyond a curt nod. "Frank, we're ready for dinner," Brittany announced, as if I were the caterer rather than the man who owned the house, bought the food, and cooked the meal. I carried the platter to the dining room, where an elegant table setting awaited. The china gleamed under the chandelier, the wine glasses sparkled, and the conversation flowed around topics I apparently wasn't qualified to discuss. I stood there for a moment, looking for my place at the table I'd sat at for over 2 decades. There wasn't one. 6 chairs surrounded the table, 6 place settings, 6 wine glasses. I counted twice, thinking I'd made a mistake. "Oh, Frank!" Brittany's voice rang out with artificial sweetness. "I have something special for you." She reached into her purse and pulled out a laminated badge attached to a lanyard. In bold, cheerful letters, it read, "Observer." Gerald and Denise burst into laughter. "Oh, that's perfect." Denise clapped her hands together. "How clever!" Brittany beamed as she held out the badge. "We thought you might like to observe tonight's family dinner. You know, see how real families celebrate the new year." The room fell silent except for the soft chuckles from Brittany's parents. Travis leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, wearing that same smirk from earlier. "Come on, Dad. Don't look so serious. Food's for family. You understand?" I stared at the badge dangling from Brittany's manicured fingers. The weight of every small humiliation from the past 3 years crashed down on me. Every dismissive comment, every decision made without consulting me, every time I'd been treated like a burden in my own home. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A calendar reminder flashed on the screen. Title check. Property lines. I took the badge from Brittany's hand, feeling the smooth plastic between my fingers. The room watched expectantly, waiting for me to pin it on like a good sport, to accept my role as the family joke. Instead, I tossed it onto the table, where it landed next to the centerpiece with a soft thud. "We'll see about that," I said quietly. The laughter died instantly. Gerald's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Denise's smile faltered. Travis straightened in his chair, and Brittany's face went pale. The silence stretched like a taut wire, crackling with tension no one quite understood yet. I retreated to my garage workshop after dinner, the taste of humiliation still bitter in my mouth. The familiar smell of motor oil and sawdust provided comfort as I sat on my workbench, staring at the family photo from Travis's graduation day. Back then, he'd looked at me with something resembling respect. 15 years I'd operated cranes for Morrison Construction. 15 years of dawn shifts and overtime, building the foundations of other people's dreams while saving every penny for my own family's future. The promotion to site supervisor came with better pay, and eventually, I'd worked my way up to construction manager, overseeing projects that reshaped the city's skyline. Every dollar had a purpose. Travis's college tuition, this house, the yard that stretched nearly an acre behind it. I designed the property myself, positioning the house to maximize the view while leaving plenty of space for Travis to build his own home someday. A legacy property where generations of Mercers could grow up together. That was before Brittany. The shift started subtly after their wedding 5 years ago. Travis began correcting my grammar at family dinners. Brittany would giggle when I mispronounced the names of expensive wines or didn't understand references to their social circle. Gerald made jokes about blue-collar wisdom that weren't quite jokes. "You wouldn't understand modern life, Frank," became Brittany's favorite dismissal whenever I offered advice about finances, home maintenance, or anything requiring actual experience rather than theoretical knowledge. The movable house arrived on a flatbed truck 18 months ago. Travis had explained it was their starter dream home, a custom-built, relocatable structure that could be placed anywhere with proper utilities. "Just temporary, Dad, until we find the perfect lot." I'd helped them position it in the prime spot of my yard, running electrical and water lines, ensuring they had the best morning light and clearest views. The handshake deal was simple. They'd save money while house hunting, and I'd have my son close by. 18 months later, they'd stopped looking for their own lot. My yard had become their permanent address, but somehow I'd become the outsider. The pattern accelerated after they settled in. Family decisions were made in their house, without consulting me. Holiday plans were discussed over dinners I wasn't invited to attend. When Brittany's parents visited, I was expected to provide entertainment and maintenance services, while being excluded from actual conversations. Last Christmas, Gerald had joked that my yard was just for show now, since the real family lived in the mobile home. Denise had suggested I might be happier in a nice senior community, where I could make friends my own age. The final insult came 3 weeks ago when Travis informed me they wanted more privacy. He suggested I should knock before approaching their house and maybe find activities outside the home to keep myself busy. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor, Wayne Hargrove. "If you ever need a hand, you know where to find me." Wayne had witnessed tonight's dinner through his kitchen window. At 65, the retired electrician understood what it meant to be dismissed by younger generations who confused education with wisdom. I stared at my phone, then at the property deed hanging framed above my workbench. My name was on that document, Franklin Mercer, sole owner of 1.2 acres of prime residential land. Not Travis, not Brittany, certainly not Gerald Foster. For the first time in months, I smiled. The next morning brought fresh humiliation. I was drinking coffee on my front porch when Travis emerged from their house, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing animatedly as he paced their small deck. "No, Gerald, I think a privacy fence is exactly what we need," he said loudly enough for me to hear. "Maybe something tall enough to create real separation." Brittany joined him outside, still in her silk robe, carrying her own coffee in a mug that cost more than most people's dinner. "Tell him about the buyout idea," she said, not bothering to lower her voice. Travis nodded. "We're also exploring options for Dad to transition to something more suitable for his age. A condo, maybe. Something low maintenance." They were discussing my future as if I weren't sitting 50 feet away. As if this wasn't my property, they were planning to divide up and redesign. I finished my coffee, set the mug down carefully, and walked to my truck. The law office of Hendricks and Associates occupied a modest building downtown, the kind of place that handled real estate transactions and estate planning for working-class folks like me. Patricia Hendricks had helped me with Linda's divorce papers and knew my situation well. "Frank," she greeted me with genuine warmth. "What brings you in today?" "I need to review some property documents," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Specifically, what rights I have regarding structures placed on my land." Patricia pulled my file from her cabinet, spreading the property survey and deed across her desk. "Is this about your son's house?" "Among other things." She traced the property lines with her finger, pointing out the boundaries that encompassed the entire yard, including the area where Travis and Brittany's house sat. "You're the sole owner, Frank. Any structures placed on your property are subject to your approval and oversight. What if I wanted to relocate a structure, say, for landscaping purposes or utility access?" Patricia flipped through several pages, finding the relevant section. "As long as the structure isn't permanently attached to a foundation, you have the right to relocate it anywhere within your property boundaries. You'd need to provide reasonable notice for safety purposes, but legally, it's your decision." Define reasonable notice. 24 hours for utility disconnection. Less if it's an emergency or maintenance issue. I studied the property survey, noting the exact dimensions and boundaries. The yard stretched 200 feet from the house to the back fence line, with dense oak trees marking the rear boundary. Plenty of space for relocation. "One more question," I said. "If someone threatens legal action over my decisions regarding my own property, how concerned should I be?" Patricia smiled. "Not very. Property rights are pretty fundamental, Frank. As long as you're not violating any safety codes or local ordinances, you can do what you want with your land." My next stop was Morrison Construction's equipment yard. After 30 years with the company, I still had friends there, and my crane certification remained current for consulting work. "Frank Mercer!" Bill Morrison himself came out to greet me. "What brings you by?" "I need to rent a crane for a small residential job. Something with enough reach for about 150 feet. Bill's eyes lit up. "You getting back into the business?" "Just a one-day job. Moving a small structure. I've got a 40-ton hydraulic that's perfect for residential work." "When do you need it?" "January 2nd, early morning." "Consider it done. You want me to send an operator, or do you still remember how to run one of these things?" I grinned. "I think I can manage." That afternoon, I walked my property line, measuring distances and noting the angle of sunlight at different times of day. The current location of Travis and Brittany's house captured morning sun beautifully, with clear views across the entire yard. The area near the back fence line, however, fell into shadow by mid-morning, blocked by the dense canopy of oak trees I'd planted 20 years ago. Perfect. My phone rang as I stood in the shadow of those trees. The caller ID showed Travis's number. "Dad, we need to talk about boundaries," he said without preamble. "Brittany feels uncomfortable with you walking around the yard when we're trying to have privacy." "It's my yard, Travis. I know that, but we live here too. We're asking for basic respect." "Respect?" I tested the word, finding it bitter. "Like the respect you showed me last night?" "That was just a joke, Dad. Don't be so sensitive." "We'll see about that," I repeated, using the same quiet tone from the night before. The line went silent for a moment. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done being the family joke. I hung up and called the utility company to schedule a routine maintenance check on the electrical lines running to the mobile home. Standard procedure required a temporary disconnection for safety purposes. How much notice do you need? The dispatcher asked. 24 hours should be sufficient. The crane arrived at Morrison's yard on a flatbed trailer, its yellow paint gleaming in the morning sun. I'd operated dozens of similar machines during my career, but this one was newer, with digital controls and enhanced safety features that made precision work easier. "She's a beauty," said Pete Kowalski, the yard foreman. "Computer-assisted load calculations, GPS positioning, the works. Makes the old hydraulics look like toys." I climbed into the cab, familiarizing myself with the updated controls. The basic principles remained the same: leverage, counterweight, smooth movements, but the technology allowed for millimeter precision that would have been impossible with older equipment. "You sure you don't want a spotter?" Pete asked. "I've got one lined up. My neighbor Wayne used to work electrical for the city. He knows safety protocols. Good man. When do you want her delivered?" "January 2nd, 6 a.m. I'll need about 4 hours."
It was one time at the company retreat.
Your coworker posted a photo. You're wearing this shirt.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
Pete made notes on his clipboard. "Residential move, you said? House or outbuilding?" "Small house. About 800 square feet, standard mobile home chassis. Piece of cake for this rig. She'll lift 40 tons without breaking a sweat." My next stop was the courthouse, where property records were kept in a basement office that smelled of old paper and microfilm. The clerk, a woman named Dorothy who'd worked there for 30 years, helped me pull the complete file on my property. "Looking for anything specific, Mr. Mercer?" "Just want to confirm the exact boundaries and any recorded easements or restrictions." She spread the survey map across the counter, pointing out the surveyor's marks and measurements. "Clean title, no liens, no easements, except for standard utility access. You've got full development rights within zoning restrictions." "What about temporary structures? Any limits on placement or relocation?" Dorothy consulted a thick book of local ordinances. "As long as you maintain proper setbacks from property lines and don't block emergency access, you can place temporary structures anywhere on your land. No permits required for moves within the same property." I photographed the relevant pages with my phone, creating a complete record of my legal rights and property boundaries. If Gerald Foster wanted to threaten legal action, I'd be ready with documentation. That evening, I walked across the yard to Wayne's house, finding him in his garage, tinkering with an old radio. At 65, Wayne Hargrove had the steady hands and careful attention to detail that came from 40 years of electrical work. "Frank, come on in. Want a beer?" "Thanks." I accepted the cold bottle and settled onto a milk crate he used as a chair. "I need to ask a favor." Wayne's eyes sharpened. "This about that business last night? My kitchen window faces your deck, you know. Saw the whole thing." "It's about respect," I said simply, "and property rights." I explained my plan, showing him the property survey and crane specifications. Wayne listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or asking technical questions about load weights and safety clearances. "You want me to spot for you while you move their house? If you're willing, I need someone who understands safety protocols and won't panic if things get complicated." Wayne grinned. "Frank, I've been waiting 30 years to see someone put that family in their place. When do we start?" "Day after tomorrow. Early morning, before they're fully awake. I'll be ready." We spent an hour going over the logistics, measuring distances and identifying potential obstacles. The move would require lifting the house straight up, swinging it 180 degrees, and setting it down in the shadow of the oak trees. Challenging, but well within the crane's capabilities and my experience level. As I walked home, I noticed lights on in Travis and Brittany's house. Through their window, I could see them hosting Gerald and Denise for what looked like an impromptu dinner party. The four of them sat around their small dining table, wine glasses gleaming, engaged in animated conversation about topics that apparently didn't require my input. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Dawn, January 2nd. All set for move. Tomorrow night, they'd go to sleep in the center of my yard, surrounded by morning sunlight and open views. They'd wake up in the shadows, wondering how their world had shifted so dramatically overnight. I smiled, imagining their faces when they realized that property rights weren't just theoretical concepts. They were tools that could reshape reality with the precision of a well-operated crane. New Year's Day dawned crisp and clear, the kind of morning that made promises for the year ahead. I spent it in my workshop, methodically preparing tools and reviewing the crane's operation manual one final time. Every movement had to be perfect, smooth, controlled, and absolutely legal. Wayne arrived at noon with a thermos of coffee and a clipboard full of safety checklists. Figured we should go over this one more time, he said, spreading a hand-drawn diagram across my workbench. I marked the utility connections, support points, and clearance requirements. You do good work, I said, studying his precise measurements. Better than some site supervisors I've worked with. 40 years of electrical taught me to measure twice, cut once. He pointed to the marked support points on the mobile home's chassis. These are your lifting points. The manufacturer's specs show maximum load distribution here and here. We walked the route together from the house's current position to its new location near the tree line. Wayne used a measuring tape to confirm clearances, while I visualized the crane's swing radius and lifting angles. How long you figure this will take? Wayne asked. 2 hours for setup and safety checks, 1 hour for the actual move, another hour for securing utilities and cleanup. And if they try to stop you? I pulled the property deed from my jacket pocket, along with the legal documentation Patricia Hendricks had prepared. They can try, but property rights are pretty clear in this state. My phone rang as we finished our measurements. Linda's name appeared on the caller ID. Frank, I'm worried about you, my ex-wife said without preamble. Travis called me this morning. He says you've been acting strange. Define strange. Secretive. Making phone calls, visiting lawyers. He thinks you might be having some kind of breakdown. I almost laughed. I'm fine, Linda. Just taking care of some property maintenance. Promise me you're not planning anything dramatic. I promise you I'm not breaking any laws or hurting anyone, she sighed. That's not exactly reassuring, Frank. After she hung up, Wayne shook his head. Even your ex-wife sides with them? Linda's always been more concerned with appearances than justice. She'll understand eventually. That afternoon, I drove to Morrison's yard for a final equipment check. The crane sat ready on its trailer, hydraulic fluid topped off, all safety systems tested and certified. Pete Kowalski handed me a folder of inspection reports and insurance documentation. Everything's green across the board, he said. Delivery at 6 a.m. sharp? Perfect. I'll meet the driver at my house. You nervous? I considered the question seriously. No, I'm ready. The evening brought unexpected entertainment. Through my kitchen window, I watched Travis and Brittany prepare for what looked like another dinner party. Gerald's Mercedes pulled into my driveway at 6 o'clock, followed by Denise in her white BMW. They carried shopping bags from expensive stores and bottles of champagne that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. I sat on my front porch drinking coffee and watching the celebration unfold in their house. Through the windows, I could see them toasting something, their faces animated with excitement and self-satisfaction. Gerald raised his glass in what appeared to be a lengthy speech, while Brittany and Travis hung on his every word. Around 9 o'clock, Wayne joined me on the porch with his own coffee mug. Big celebration over there, he observed. Looks like it. Wonder what they're celebrating. Probably discussing my future living arrangements. Gerald mentioned senior communities at Christmas. Wayne snorted. Senior communities? Like you're some kind of invalid who can't take care of himself. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the lights in their house gradually dim as the party wound down. By 11 o'clock, the yard was dark, except for the security lights I'd installed around the property perimeter. You sure about this, Frank? Wayne asked quietly. I thought about the observer badge, about Travis telling me food was for family, about 3 years of steady humiliation disguised as harmless jokes. I thought about the property deed with my name on it and the mobile home, sitting in the prime location of my yard, without so much as a thank you. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Wayne nodded. Then I'll see you at dawn. After he left, I set my alarm for 5:30 a.m. and laid out my work clothes, steel-toed boots, heavy jeans, and the Morrison construction jacket I'd worn for 15 years of crane operations. Tomorrow, I'd remind my family that respect wasn't something you could take away from a man. It was something he chose to give, and I was done giving. The crane's engine rumbled to life at 6:15 a.m., its diesel exhaust creating small clouds in the cold morning air. I'd been awake since 5:30, double-checking hydraulic connections and safety protocols, while Wayne positioned traffic cones and warning signs around the work area. The delivery driver finished unhitching the trailer and handed me the keys. "She's all yours, Mr. Mercer. You need pickup at what time?" 10 o'clock should be plenty." "Roger that. Good luck with your move." I climbed into the operator's cab, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility that came with controlling 40 tons of precision machinery. The digital displays showed green across the board: hydraulic pressure optimal, counterweight balanced, GPS positioning active. Wayne's voice crackled through the radio headset. "All clear on the ground, Frank. Utilities are disconnected. You're good to go." The mobile home sat peacefully in its prime location, morning sunlight beginning to creep across its eastern windows. In a few minutes, Travis and Brittany would wake up expecting another day of looking down on the old man who'd built everything they enjoyed. I extended the crane's outriggers, stabilizing the massive machine for the delicate work ahead. The boom swung toward the house with mechanical precision, its cables and lifting harness ready to embrace the structure that had overstayed its welcome. The first window lit up just as my hook made contact with the lifting points. "What the hell?" Travis's voice carried across the yard as he stumbled outside, in pajama pants and a t-shirt. "Dad, what are you doing?" I ignored him, focusing on the load calculations displayed on my screen. 800 square feet of mobile home, fully furnished, approximately 15 tons total weight. Well within the crane's capacity. "Frank, stop this immediately." Brittany emerged behind Travis, her silk robe fluttering as she ran toward the crane. "You can't just move our house." I keyed the radio. "Wayne, I need you to keep them at a safe distance. OSHA regulations require a minimum clearance during lifting operations." "Copy that." Wayne stepped between my family and the work area, his reflective safety vest giving him official authority. "Sorry, folks, but this is an active construction zone. You need to stay back for your own safety." "Construction zone?" Travis's voice cracked with indignation. "This is our house." I engaged the lifting mechanism, watching the cables grow taut as they took the weight of the structure. The house rose smoothly from its foundation blocks, swaying slightly in the morning breeze. "Dad, put it back right now!" Travis was shouting now, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "I'm calling the police." "Feel free," I said calmly into the radio, knowing Wayne would relay the message. "But you might want to review property law first." Gerald Foster's Mercedes screeched into my driveway, followed closely by Denise's BMW. They must have received panicked phone calls from Travis and Brittany. Gerald burst from his car, wearing a golf outfit and an expression of pure outrage. "Mercer, what is the meaning of this?" He strode toward the crane like a man accustomed to having his demands met immediately. I swung the boom slowly clockwise, the suspended house rotating gracefully through the air. Below, my family and their supporters scrambled to follow the movement, their heads tilted back like spectators at an air show. "Stop this madness!" Denise shrieked. "Gerald, do something! Call our lawyer!" "I'm calling mine right now!" Gerald pulled out his phone, his fingers stabbing at the screen. Wayne's voice came through the radio again. "Frank, you've got neighbors coming out to watch. Word's spreading pretty quick." I glanced around and saw figures emerging from houses throughout the neighborhood. Some carried coffee mugs, others held phones to record the spectacle. Mrs. Patterson, from 3 houses down, had brought a folding chair and was settling in for the show. "This is completely illegal." Travis was following the house's movement, gesticulating wildly. "You can't just move someone's home without permission." I reached into my jacket and pulled out the property deed, holding it up so everyone could see the official seal and signatures. "Actually, I can. This is my property, and that's a temporary structure placed here with my permission." "Temporary?" Brittany's voice rose to a near shriek. "We've lived here for 18 months, and now you'll live somewhere else on the property." I continued the swing, bringing the house over its new location near the tree line. "I'm relocating you for landscaping purposes." Gerald had reached someone on his phone and was speaking in urgent, clipped tones. Yes, this is an emergency. I need an injunction to stop a property owner from... What? Are you sure? But this is outrageous. I began lowering the house toward its new foundation blocks, which Wayne had positioned earlier that morning. The structure descended slowly, precisely, like a puzzle piece finding its proper place. You can't do this to us, Travis was almost pleading now. We're family. I keyed the radio one final time, making sure my voice carried clearly across the yard. Family doesn't hand out observer badges at dinner. Family doesn't tell a man that food isn't for him in his own house. And family sure as hell doesn't plan to buy out the man who gave them everything. The house settled onto its new foundation with a gentle thud. I retracted the lifting cables and began stowing the boom, my movements deliberate and professional. Gerald ended his phone call with a frustrated curse. The lawyer says property owners have broad discretion over temporary structures. There's nothing we can do legally. Nothing you can do? Brittany stared at their house, now sitting in deep shadow beneath the oak canopy. Look where he put us. We'll barely get any sunlight. Should have thought of that before you decided I wasn't family, I said, climbing down from the crane's cab. The yard fell silent except for the diesel engine's idle and the murmur of neighbors discussing what they'd witnessed. Travis, Brittany, Gerald, and Denise stood clustered together near their relocated house, their faces showing a mixture of shock, anger, and dawning comprehension. Wayne removed his safety vest and walked over to me. Beautiful work, Frank. Textbook precision. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and looked at my family one last time. Welcome to your new view, I said quietly. Then I turned and walked toward my house, leaving them standing in the shadows of the trees I'd planted 20 years ago, finally understanding that respect wasn't something they could take away. It was something they'd never deserved in the first place. The crane's engine shut off with a final rumble, and the yard fell into stunned silence.